Welcome. Thank you for coming. We're really excited to start what we hope will be an ongoing series about travel. We have learned that Valerie knows all. So on May 11th, she will be coming back to talk about Mexico and Caribbean. And if any of you have ideas for parts, distant lands, unknown or known, let us know, because maybe we'll put something on for the fall too. Anyway, Valerie gets the prize. Valerie diLorenzo gets the prize for our most versatile programmer. She is a tech wizard, and I think some of you have probably come to some of her technology talks. Have you actually? Oh well.
These are all new people.
These are all new people. Okay, well she knows everything because she used to work for Apple, and she's also a singer. She's performed here twice, more? Okay, 4 times. Time flies. And she also teaches at other East End venues and also in Westchester and Putnam counties. But she considers this area and our library, I like to think, her home, her spiritual home. She actually lives in Sag Harbor. So, we're happy you're here. Please welcome Valerie diLorenzo.
Thank you, Penny.
Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me okay? Great. So, welcome. Again, my name is Valerie diLorenzo. Today we're going to be talking about travel. Just want to give you a very brief background to let you know where this is all being born from and what kind of class we're going to go in for today. Everything that Penny said is true. I grew up in Westchester County, but my parents thankfully built a house in Sag Harbor, and about 5 years ago I decided to relocate here. I am primarily an entertainer, as I mentioned to you before, and while I entertained, I traveled all over the world. And so as I was in certain places, I just decided to do more traveling and learn about the world and different cultures. And during a very brief hiatus, when in 2008, when the economy tanked and the rest of the world was looking for work, the theater company that I was working for tanked too. And because I happen to love computers and technology, I was invited to work for Apple Inc. as a trainer and instructor and an independent consultant for them, because I do have a tremendous geeky side. And so that's how this was all born, and Rogers Memorial Library is my favorite place. They're so wonderful
You're
here.
being filmed.
And, I know.
You are being filmed.
So we have a great relationship, and they present many, many wonderful programs. And so the Travel Talk series really grew out of a need for people who wanted to get some tips on how to do vacation planning. So Penny, in her infinite wisdom, decided to put together a series. And today we're going to focus on the United States. On May 11th, we're going to talk about Mexico and the Caribbean, and we want to hear from you as to what other kinds of things or places that you would like to know. So I can talk about anything and tailor this to your needs, and I can also give you a lot of tips and tricks that I use when planning. And one of the things that I like to do is, after the class is over, I like to send you notes, kind of encapsulating what we've talked about, maybe with some suggestions or answers to questions. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to send a piece of paper around. It's totally optional. And I ask you to write out your name and your email address. And if you'd like to receive those notes, I'm happy to send them to you. And know that this is just something that I do for you. It's not a requirement of the library, so I will get to them within the next couple of weeks. And know that when I send the email out, it goes out as a blind carbon copy, so nobody sees each other's email addresses. And after I send that email out, that piece of paper gets shredded. So I know that there's security concerns, and I just want to make sure that you know that those are being addressed. So I'm going to send this piece of paper around, and if you want to write down name and email, that would be really helpful. Now, so again, before I get started, what kinds of questions do you all have? Why are you all here today? What kinds of things are you looking for today? Anybody? Yes?
Bargain travel.
Bargain travel.
Greater solutions.
Greater solutions. Bargain travel. Creative solutions. Do you mind if we use this? Okay. What else? And just shout them out.
How old a hotel is?
How old a hotel
How
is.
late it's been refurbished?
Okay.
Longer stays.
Longer
If you're retired,
stays for
like we're
retired.
going to Maine and we're going to stay for a month and a half.
Okay. What else?
It's reasonably priced.
Okay. Reasonable prices are always really important. What else?
How do you know that the major cities that I was trying to look for a wedding at Portland, Oregon, and it was crazy and going, what is going on in this town when I can't get something in the suburbs? You know, it's like,
Okay.
yeah.
So that's a really
Something's
good
going
question.
on, so
Yes.
you're getting
Okay. What else?
travel clubs and
Travel clubs? Okay.
Airbnb
Airbnb. What else?
versus VRBO.
Versus
VRBO.
VRBO.
Yes, I'm interested in Mexico.
Okay. We're going to talk primarily about that in May. A lot of the things that I'm going to talk to you about today are universal tips and tricks for traveling, but I am going to focus on the United States, but that's not to say that I can't do a little
I
crossover.
didn't realize that.
Yes, Mexico's my favorite destination, and I say that wholeheartedly. Anything else that I'm missing? Yes.
Oh, yeah. Teacher, when I was maybe promised before I died, it was a long time ago, that I would go to where he lives, facing that town, facing the Grand Teton.
Okay. Okay. Now, most of my this is good.
Oh,
And yes,
I have a grandfather who's American, and her mom is Mexican. And when I went to, I got tickets on JetBlue,
okay.
and they have an insurance policy, but they wouldn't insure the mom being a non-resident.
Being a non-resident. Yes, those are some issues that we come up with.
All right.
Yeah.
Insurance, I guess.
So insurance is also a big travel. Okay, so good. So these are a couple of things. So here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to try and get to as many of these as possible. What I don't get to, again, I'm going to send you some follow-up notes. So you can feel free to take notes, but know that I'm going to send you some things, exact email addresses so that you'll have those just in case. So usually, nowadays, when I plan a trip, most of my research is done online. Does everybody feel comfortable going online? That's where you're going to find the majority of your answers. And it can be daunting and exhaustive, and you could go on multiple sites, and here's the thing, find reviews or find suggestions. But just like any other product, you may love it and you may hate it. Your needs might be different. It might have been a bad day. Who knows what's going on, So that's why there's a couple of sources that I use that I find to be very helpful when I'm planning the trip. So it's really deciding where you want to go, but that doesn't always pan out either. So let me give you an example. Last year I knew that I wanted to go, last year was my year of the Caribbean. I wanted to go back. It was all about the warmer weather. And I wanted to go someplace interesting and different, and I wanted to go someplace in June. So even though I'm talking about the Caribbean, this is the same process that I would use for being in the United States. So what did I look at first? I looked at first, I wanted to know weather patterns in the Caribbean. And where would I look at weather patterns? I actually go to the Navy SEAL website. And again, I will write these all down for you, but I have a cousin who's a former Navy SEAL, and he says that this is the weather app that he goes to because it gives very, very accurate forecasts about what's going on with weather. So I decided that I wanted to go to a place called Vieques in Puerto Rico. It was offshore, and I heard it was wonderful and secluded. It was the beginning of June, and there weren't going to be a lot of kids there. I love kids, but this time I needed to not be around a lot of families. But Vieques turned out to be very prohibitive for me. And the reason why it was prohibitive for me is because there was you could go to Puerto Rico, as many times a day as you wanted to go, but getting to Vieques required either a plane ride in a very small plane, which I'm uncomfortable with. So I'm giving you what my criteria was. Some of you might not feel comfortable in an 8-seater plane. That was not comfortable for me. And I knew that they had a lot of trade winds in the late afternoon. So I thought this might be a little uncomfortable, but there's a ferry. The ferry runs once a day, and it's about a 3 to 4 hour ride, which was, again, no problem for me at all. The problem is that because it only ran at a certain time after a certain hour of the day, I also found out that the JetBlue flights down to Puerto Rico were among the most delayed in JetBlue's fleet. How did I find that out? There are many travel websites that will tell you on-time performance for flights. It's like flighttravel.com or ontimeperformance.com. There's so many of them, and again, I will send them to you. So I want to know flight time performance so I can plan accordingly. And then, so I decided Vieques, it was too much. There was no major hotel there, which again was not a deterrent, but I wasn't really happy with the quality of the Airbnbs. I couldn't get enough information for what was going on. And although I speak enough Spanish to get around, I wasn't comfortable communicating with somebody primarily in Spanish. I needed them to have a little more English so that we could have more understanding. So eventually, that trip, I ended up in Curacao at the time, and it was a wonderful trip. I ended up getting an amazing deal. I don't know if anybody's ever been to Curacao, but what I found was that no one goes to Curacao. It is the least visited island in the Caribbean. However, it is below the hurricane zone. So the chances of having a hurricane in Curacao are very, very slim. So they have 355 days a year of sunshine. Their trade winds were very small. On-time, great performance, and amazing deals. Curacao is very, very far still behind the times. The one deterrent I found about Curacao was that they grow none of their own crops, so everything is brought in. So part of the reason why Curacao ended up being so reasonable for me was because the food is very expensive when you're down there. But you have to kind of plan around that. What do I do when I'm investigating a place? I'll type in Wikipedia the name of the destination that I want to go to. I'll even, so I can find out what's happening if it's an island, especially if it's an international destination. You want to go to find out what's their culture, what kind of crops do they grow, and that's going to really help you answers about food and culture and things like that. But we're talking about the United States, and you know that things are pretty accessible in the United States, so you don't really have to worry about that. But I still will contact the Chamber of Commerce online for a place that I'm investigating. So where am I looking at going right now? Right now, I'm looking at taking a June trip to Baltimore, Maryland. There's a conference down there of a speaker that I'd like to see, and then a band that I follow is going to be performing down near Rehoboth Beach, and I thought, I haven't been to Washington, D.C. for a while, so right now I've started planning a little trip to Washington, D.C. So what do I do with that? First of all, I have criteria that works for me. And when I say criteria, what I'm talking about is I know who I like to fly, and I know about that airplane, that airline, and I'm going to say flat out, I'm not the world's best flyer. I'm a frightened flyer, I can do it. I've gone to frightened flyer school. I had a friend that was a pilot. I had a couple of really, really bad plane experiences when I was in my 20s. And so I'll get on the plane, and if you're with me, you won't know that I'm having trouble. But a flight and on-time performance and weather and where I sit in the plane are my criteria for picking the flights. So I like to fly on JetBlue, American, and Delta. I have frequent flyer mileage programs with each one of them, and I've been a member of each one of them for, oh my God, I don't know how many years. Oh, part of what I wanted to tell you was that My first job out of college was, I worked for Random House, a book publisher. And before I went into entertainment, my parents told me that I had to have a real job. So I got a job at Random House and I became a meeting planner. And that's how my love of travel began. I traveled all over the world planning meetings for our sales staff. And it was very exciting. And that's how I learned inside negotiations with hotels. And I got some really great feedback on certain hotel chains. And at that time, the hotel chains that we used as a company was Four Seasons, Ritz-Carlton, Marriott's, and on occasion we would use a Hyatt or a Hilton. So I still stick with Marriott as my preferred choice of hotels. You know, there's Intercontinental, there's so many of them, but you know, you're looking at a lot of different price grades. And I believe that there's a deal for everything, and sometimes it takes a lot of research. And figuring out, again, what is it that you want? So now, and I was just doing this yesterday, when I decided to go to do this trip to DC. I said, okay, well, what do you want to do? June's a great time. Let me see what's happening in June. Who's talking about events that are happening in the town? Okay, so the time that I want to go in June, the kids are still in school. Most of the kids are still in school. I know that the southern states, from say South Carolina down, have gotten out of school June 1st, but the chances of them traveling to DC are very small during that time. Because we're still in graduations, we're still in kids coming home from college, we're still in Father's Day mode. It's kind of early June, and you don't have a lot of family traffic yet. These things are all on websites, by the way, you know, where you can see traffic they can kind of tell you a little bit of forecasted traffic patterns as to when people travel. Because that's a question that I get asked all the time, well, when should I go? So what I did then was I decided that I could either drive down to DC or I could fly down to DC. And the criteria for me flying now is I want to know what JetBlue's schedule is, what's American's schedule, what's Delta's schedule. I like to fly nonstop as much as possible. I like to fly out of JFK. And if I'm driving, I like to, if I'm driving myself to the airport, I like to drive out of JFK. And the reason being is because I like the parking service that's at JFK. It's also a straight shot down the belt. Obviously, I don't want a flight that's at 10 o'clock because I'm going to have to leave at 5 o'clock in the morning. So if I'm going to leave at 5 o'clock in the morning, I might as well get a flight that's at 7:30 or 8 o'clock. So that's how I kind of forecast that. Yes?
Can I just ask about the parking? Do you do JFK parking or do you do like a parking spot?
I do, there's a place called Smart Park, and there's a place called the Parking Spot.
I do the parking
Right.
spot.
If you're a AAA member, and I'm all about the discounts, everybody, all about the discounts. It's just that I think that there's a deal to be had, and I think that there's, I think these places want you to use they want you to use their services, so they're very, very willing to work with you. So I am a AAA member. I also am a member of all those frequent flyer traveler clubs. I also use Groupon a lot. Does everybody know what Groupon is? So Groupon is, you'll go to Groupon.com, there's another one called LivingSocial.com. Groupon, Travel Zoo is different from Groupon. So Groupon and Living Social is that they offer you services, goods, vacations, and they offer them at deep discounts. And what you do is you buy a coupon. That's why it's called Groupon. So it's a coupon, and it gets you discounts on services. And so, for instance, the reason why I keep going to Smart Park, besides the fact that they're very nice and they have their own frequent driver program, because it's all about building the points, right? It's a straight shot down Southern State, right? And then if you've ever used one of those parking places, you know, you drive in, they're very nice, they take the luggage out, you get on the van, you're done. But Groupon usually offers a coupon where I end up paying $9 a day for parking.
So you go to Groupon and then you search?
So I'll go to Groupon.com and I'll say, you put in your zip code, and you'll say I want JFK parking, or LaGuardia parking, or Islip parking if people are going to be leaving out of Islip. And then you'll see what comes up on on the listing. Smart Park, the parking spot, are almost always on there. And so I will buy the vouchers. The vouchers are good for, say, 90 to 180 days. So I have those vouchers, and I can park for $9 a day. Here's the other nice thing about getting on a Groupon.com mailing list, is that they often offer discounted prices over and above what they're already offering on the discount. What does that mean? So I let Groupon send me an email every day. And they'll send me an email and it says it's 20% off travel today, or 20% off things to do today. So now I'm going to buy the coupon for the parking spot for $9 a day. And then I'm going to get an additional 20% off of that. So my parking gets really reduced.
So you can use the Groupon and you can use your AAA?
And I can use no, you can't use your AAA. It's two separate things. You go to Groupon. You sign up for a Groupon to be, here's the thing, you want to get on as many emailing lists as possible. I make a dummy email account. What do I mean by that? I have Valerie diLorenzo at MSN. That's my email address. That's where you're going to get your email from. I have another email address that's got a different name on it, and that email address gets all my junk. All of those advertisements, all of that stuff, because I don't want my email box to be filled with all of these things, but at least I know that if something's going into that email address, it has to do with my shopping or my travel or things like that. So here's what I do, okay? I'm going to go back to the Groupon thing. So Groupon.com, I go to Groupon, I type in Smart Park, JFK. Smart Park is going to be offering me a coupon for 5 days worth of parking for $9 a day, it's $45. Groupon.com sends me an email saying, I'm offering you 20% off of that, and they give me a code. So now I'm getting 20% off $45. There's another step. The other step in this is that because I belong to all of the travel frequent flyer program miles I get, every time I spend money at Groupon, I get miles on my frequent traveler program. This is how we build miles, and miles and frequent flyer tips are very helpful for us when we're going to be traveling mostly in major chains, but not always. Now, Airbnb, VRBO, they're very different because they are individually run. So there's not a lot of couponing or bargaining involved in that. So I'm primarily telling you what my process is when I'm going about planning a trip. So I figure out what the schedule is. If I can fly out of JFK, it's my preference. My next preference is to go to LaGuardia. I very rarely fly out of Iceland. The planes are too small. It's Southwest. You have to pay extra money to choose your seat. And if I'm not sitting in the front of the plane on an aisle seat, I'm not happy. You might be, but I'm not. So I'm not doing that to myself. So that this way I can have a stress-free experience. And again, I'm just telling you what works for me. You may be completely different. Some people like sitting in the back row on the window. I do not. So I can also go to Westchester. I'm originally from Westchester, so I have family in Westchester. I also can go up to Stewart International Airport, which is up in Newburgh. So I have 5 airports to choose from if I want to go and do that. And so I figure out which airport has the best flight available for me, not necessarily based on price, but then what I'll do is that if I decide to fly out of a different airport, then I'll see who's around of my friends, or I'll see maybe there's an interesting festival or something going on. So I tie travel in with my other travel, and that's how I plan the trip. So back to the DC trip. So then I decided that, okay, I'll get the parking voucher. I found a decent flight that I can get down to DC, because you know what? I think I'd rather fly. I don't want to drive. I just drove back and forth from Florida. I'm a little tired. I don't want to drive again. So then I went to, where's the conference being held? Is at a place called the Crystal Marriott in downtown Baltimore. So I went to the Marriott today. I happen to have a best friend that works for the Marriott Corporation. So she gives me her Marriott Friends and Families rate. It's a very simple code, everyone. It's MMF. That's the code. It's no major secret. It's MMF. You can also go in under AAA. AAA offers amazing discounts at the major chain hotels. and look at the prices. I go to Marriott. The reasons why I go to Marriott are because I have 222,000 miles on Marriott. I like Marriott. I can get a good deal at a Marriott. Marriott also encompasses Residence Inn, Fairmont, Springfield Suites. It's partners with Ritz-Carlton. It's also partners with Starwood Hotels right now. So there's a lot of ways for me to keep mileage going, okay? So that's why I choose that particular place. So I find out what the best deal is, and then I look at the hotel website. So I go to the hotel. That's how I find out what's going on in that hotel. So I know that the Crystal Center Marriott in Baltimore has recently undergone a renovation in the last 5 years, so the chances of them having renovation now are very slim. Hotel websites will never tell you on the hotel website if they are undergoing renovation. In that case, what I would do is I would call. And they have to tell you legally if they are planning a renovation within the next 6 months. They have to tell you. Don't rely on a website. That's the time when I would pick up the phone and call. And you know, I gotta tell you something, every once in a while, when I call a hotel and I'll say, you know, I'm coming down, because this has happened when a hotel or a flight's been overbooked, and I'm like, well, what's going on? I'll go to the city online, I'll say, you know, what's happening in Portland, Oregon during the month of June? I'll type in Google, Portland, Oregon, 2017, you know, July 2017 events. And there will be a website that's going to tell me what's happening, okay? That's all a matter of getting comfortable with Google searching. So, but you know, sometimes it really pays to call the hotel, and sometimes it pays to call the hotel back. And if you're nice to them, chances are they're going to be nice to you. Sometimes you might get somebody that's not really cooperative. Thank you very much. I'll hang up the phone, I'll call back, and I'll talk to somebody else. And if I really, really want to do something. So there's ways to go about it. You know, and you tell them, again, with Marriott, I'm a rewards member, you know, I'm an American Express holder. What can you do for me? When I was driving down to Florida at the end of December, I had no plan. I didn't reserve anything ahead of time, because I just wanted to see how long the drive took. But I knew that I could stay at a Marriott, and I did do that. I called certain Marriotts along the way and said, I'm driving down, you know, what do you have available tonight? And that was a very busy week. Christmas week is a crazy week. But I was able to find a really great hotel rate using the MMF code, and you know, deciding, oh, okay, well, let me stay here. It's $60 a night, and I can get breakfast. If I stay here, it's $49 a night, but I don't get breakfast. So to me, it was kind of a wash.
Do you just say, oh, yeah, I'm blah, 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 and I'm going to move tonight, and can I use this MMF code, please?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. If they don't verify, will you come in?
Sometimes, you know, they'll ask you, you know, just to verify it, and I say, no, I use that, or my AAA, and I'll call them up and I'll say, this is what I have, what's the best rate? That's it when and I do that, like for that particular trip, I knew what I was in for driving down to Florida between Christmas and New Year's. That's a crazy time to travel, right? So while I'm here at this point, let's talk a little bit about times to travel. Do you all have a sense of when it's a good time to travel certain places or not? How do you decide that for yourselves?
So we would go to Florida in the summer, or DC, and I've been to DC in May, and it's been this long time. So I'd like to check the travel,
Right.
weather travel.
So if you take a destination like DC, let's take that for instance. The Cherry Blossom Festival is in DC in May, so it's going to be very popular, and those things are going to be sold out way in advance. Despite what anyone feels about what's happening in our government right now, DC is a very popular destination. So there's a lot of people that are going down there just to check things out. So, and I didn't realize that until, of course, I decided to go to DC. So you kind of, do you want to stay right downtown? I don't know, maybe I'd like to stay in Georgetown. You know, maybe I want to stay a little bit on the outskirts so that I'm not right in the middle of things. It, again, depends on personal preference. So also, think about school schedules. This is really important. Is anyone in here traveling with children? Well, you guys are in the lucky spot because you can kind of choose, right? So in a generality, and again, some of you may already know this, September and October, best times to travel. However, you run the risk of missing September out here in the Hamptons, which we all know is the most glorious time, right? Sometimes we can move that a little bit into October. But if you have an opportunity to travel, September and October are always the best times to go. September even more so than October. You want to wait till at least 2 or 3 days after Labor Day. Let the kids get back to school. Let the teachers get back to school. Let the parents have time to calm down and then get on the plane. November, first 2 weeks are kind of okay. Once we get into mid-November, everybody's going to Florida. They're going to someplace warm. We have holiday travel happening for Thanksgiving. Snowbirds. Anybody going to Florida? The snowbirds start November 1st. They usually come back starting around April 1st. That's if you're going to Florida. What else did I want to tell you? December. December's a great time to travel. In the first 2 weeks of December, or even the Tuesday after Thanksgiving, you can find amazing deals pretty much all over the world. You could go to Italy, you could go to Austria, you could go to any of the Caribbean islands, somewhere between like you want to look at the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. Tuesday after Thanksgiving, because again, a holiday, you got to let everybody get home, let the airline personnel calm down for a day, because you want them in a good mood, right? These are all things to think about, right? So Tuesday, oh my God, they don't have to see a family, they're going to see a lovely couple that just wants to have a nice time. And these things, these are all criteria to think about, right? So wait until the Tuesday after Thanksgiving, and you have about a 12-day stretch in there, from maybe the Tuesday after Thanksgiving until about the 15th of December. That's a great window of time to take a trip. Because after that, between December 15th and say, maybe January 10th, January 15th, you're going to find a lot of great difficulty in your foreign destinations, in the Caribbean destinations, and any one of your popular United States destinations. So that's some criteria to think about. January, February, March, it's busy season any place it's warm, right? Because the snowbirds are not just about Florida now. Now it's about Southern California, and it's about Arizona, and even parts of Texas. Houston and Austin and those areas are very, very popular now. And then, so January, February, March, great times to go to Europe. I know we're not talking about Europe, but they're great times to go to Europe. A lot of this has to do with kids, everyone. If you don't have kids to worry about traveling with, you want to go when they are in school or when they have just gotten back to school. Because not only are you not dealing then with kids and families, but you're not dealing with teachers and any kind of education personnel. That's not to say that they're not nice people. What I'm saying is that you think of how many people go away on a school vacation during that week in February. Stay away from the week in February as much as possible. It's very expensive. You also got to think then about spring break. You got to think about Passover, you have to think about Easter, you have to think about now what's happening, where are we in April? April, the weather is kind of funny. The weather starts getting a little weird. Maybe that's a criteria for you. What is it that you want? You know, I think that a lot of the travel decisions we make are based on a lot of different factors. Sometimes I want to go someplace warm. Sometimes I just want to do something different. Sometimes I'd like to go and see a speaker, or I might want to go to a program. And then sometimes maybe I'll want to go to a family event and tie that around a bunch of different things. So your criteria for traveling could be to get away, to find something new. You know, I don't know what they are. But when you're planning your travel, you want to get a good idea of school breaks and vacations, not only where you are, but where you're going. Because that's, again, it's a big factor in price about where you're going. Also, thinking about timing. May starts, we have Mother's Day, communions, confirmations. We have a lot of graduations, and kids start college kids start getting out of school, middle of May. There's a lot of travel, right? June, Graduations. College graduations are primarily in May, but they can extend to the beginning of June. And June is a very good month to travel, depending on where you want to go. Any of your national parks in June is a great time to go. First 2 weeks of June. Arizona, Grand Teton, any place out in the Southwest, up in the Northwest, first 2 weeks of June are great to go there. Not very heavily populated. Once we get into the middle of June through the summer, you all know it's crazy where you go. It's going to be crazy wherever you're traveling. But if you can deal with that, you can certainly go, but you're also not going to get a lot of great deals during that time. And I don't know.
What do you do for July and August?
Buckle down and enjoy the Hamptons. They do, you know.
It's a rental property.
All right. Well, I know that some people go up to, upstate New York. Upstate New York is really nice. There's a lot of places upstate. You know, if you like lakes and rivers and mountains and things like that.
Maine in June, beginning of July.
Maine is pretty much never crowded. Okay, it's a beautiful state, but it's also a very big state. So there's a lot to go up there. It seems to me that New England doesn't get as crowded as it does in certain of the beach towns. I mean,
At least.
well, I was going to say, then you're looking at starting, if you wanted to do like fall tour, you know, that's when upstate New York gets really crowded. You know what I always want to do? I want to take that cruise that goes up to New England to see all the fall foliage. I think that would be a really nice trip to take. That's something to plan. No, it goes up the Atlantic Ocean. It goes up to New York and all the way up to Nova Scotia.
Trouble is, it's not inexpensive.
It's not inexpensive. However, it's when it's when you plan it. I use a great site called vacations2go.com if I'm planning a cruise. That's what I use for cruising. So that would be a place that I would consult for that particular cruise. Yes? Vacations2go.com.
Valerie?
Yes,
Can I
Patty?
just ask you to back up a second and talk about, do you go to travel websites, airline websites, or like Orbitz or whatever?
Yeah, you bring up a really good point because people ask me that all the time. Orbitz, Travelocity, Expedia. I use them for a reference, as a reference point, but I find that because I'm a frequent flyer member, the deal is always better if I book direct on Marriott. The deal is always better if I book direct on JetBlue or American or Delta.
And would you go to the website or call a person, and how would you do that?
Normally what I do is I go to the website. I go to the website, I see what's going on. This is just going to keep on doing this. I go and I see what's going on, and I like to compare prices. I like to compare reviews. So if I'm planning, where do I want to go now? I wanted to go to, I have $1,000 worth of JetBlue credit that I have to use on a getaway, but it has to be in the Caribbean. So that, for instance, I would probably go to Travelocity or Expedia, and I'd like to see what's happening. That's where I can get a good idea of ranking by people like ourselves. Expedia, Travelocity, Orbitz, those help me for that. Kayak.com, by the way, is probably your most inclusive and best site to go to because they do have a comparison feature, which is really, really helpful. That's kayak.com. There's also another good app, website, an app called Skyscanner. Another good travel site, and again, I'll send you all of this. I use TripAdvisor. I want to talk to you about reviews just briefly. I use TripAdvisor to really get an idea of what are other people saying about this property. And I will post fair reviews on there too. And again, I say the review thing with the caveat. What may be important to me may not be important to you. And you know, the other thing is, you may think that I spend an eternity online, and I really don't, but I know where to look, right? So here's the thing, if I go to a website, because this happened when I was doing the Curacao trip last year. There was a beautiful Marriott there, but I couldn't figure out whether I wanted to stay at the Marriott downtown or on the outskirts. And there were these really odd reviews for both of them. Well, you know what I did is that when somebody posts a review, read their other reviews for something else. And you're going to find out whether that person is just looking for something to complain about or whether they're actually giving you really good information. Does that make sense?
Is that easy enough to search?
Yeah, you can just search that person and you can see what's the tone of their reviews, because sometimes people are grumpy. You're right. And sometimes people want a certain amount of things. And I'm gonna give you another example that just happened to me. On my way down to Florida, I stayed in a hotel in Walterboro, South Carolina. I did not learn until after I drove to Florida that when you go to South Carolina, you can stay at the top of the state or you can stay at the bottom of the state. But the hotels in the middle of South Carolina, off 95, are among the worst ranked hotels in the nation as a whole. So I found this out the hard way. I was tired, I needed to stop, so I stayed at a Ramada Inn, right? I thought Ramada was safe. I'm telling you right now, it was the worst hotel experience I've ever had. When I tell you the level of filth, I can't even go back for it. Wyndham owns Ramada. I sent a note to Ramada, I sent a note to Wyndham, and I said, this is what happened to me. Okay, we're very, very sorry. They refunded my money and they gave me a free night someplace else. I didn't know. That's what happened. That was the price that I paid for not planning that trip because I didn't know. Now I know. So what did I do? I did post a review. It was a fair review, but then I noticed that there was I wasn't alone in my assessment. So some people want something to complain about. So look and see what they wrote, because if you go to my account on TripAdvisor, you'll see that I give very fair reviews about things that are important to me, or maybe not. You know, I can't comment on the food at certain places because I chose not to eat there. I ultimately ended up staying at the Marriott in Curacao on the outskirts of town because that was what I wanted to do. It was a better deal, it was a prettier resort. There was more to do, and I felt like I could just really relax rather than being in the midst of a bustling downtown. You might want to be in the midst of a bustling downtown. So that's kind of the criteria that I use. So I find that Yelp, I use TripAdvisor more for travel. Yelp is pretty good, but Yelp is a little more universal in terms of how it deals with its businesses. TripAdvisor is a little more focused on TripAdvisor, on trips and travel. So then I'm going to finish my criteria on my Baltimore trip, just so you know what my process is. So I find the flight, I find the parking, I look at the times, I look and see what's available on that plane. There's a website, and now it's completely escaping my mind. There's 3 websites, excuse me, I'll send these to you, on where you can look at the planes. You can look at how many rows, how many seats, what their flying performance is, what their on-time performance is. Those things might be important to you. You also want to know about cancellation policies. Those are very important, so that's going to take me to insurance in just a minute. I use a company called Allianz, A-L-L-I-A-N-Z. They are pretty universal, and they have partnerships with American and JetBlue and United and Delta and am I allowed to mention United here? I very rarely have flown United. I don't have a lot to say about them. It just never worked out for me to fly United, maybe a handful of times in my life. So I don't really have any experience with them. But I do know that Allianz is a travel insurance network. When you buy your ticket, buy your insurance at the time of the ticket. If you buy it after the fact, let's see, you have 48 hours after you buy the ticket. If you don't buy the insurance at the time of buying the ticket, you have 48 hours to get the ticket insurance price. After that, the price for insurance goes way up. But you have to ask for it. You have to ask for it. I did make a mistake one time, and I thought I bought the insurance and I didn't, because you know, it took me a while to book online. I was a little untrustworthy. I wanted to speak to a person. I wanted to make sure that we were on the same page. But so one time, this was last year, that I didn't I forgot to add the insurance, and I thought about it maybe a week later. And I called them up and I asked them and I apologized and said, I messed up, I normally do this. She looked at my history, she saw, you always buy the insurance, she said, I'm gonna give you that price. So the price was $17 if I had bought it with the ticket. If it was not with the ticket, it was $77. So there's a big thing, and ask for it, and be nice about it. Yes.
Valerie, yeah.
Well, I was going to get to that to a second. So, because I know that you talked about for non-resident, you're kind of hard pressed to get travel insurance nowadays for non-U.S. residents, especially if it's a U.S. travel insurance company. There's really, I can't comment on it. I only know that.
It was so weird.
Yeah.
Because, I heard the big stuff JetBlue, and I hate the idea of filling up my email to all of these different places, because I'm not great on the computer. But, the big thing was, they wouldn't give me the travel, mileage. They said, oh, but the travel mileage has to go to them. And I said, I'm buying the tickets.
But it has to be for you, it has to be for the person traveling. And unfortunately, there used to be some other guidelines for resident aliens or non-resident aliens. God, that's such an odd word for people, right? But they're not going to give it to anyone other than a U.S. resident. They can't. The liability is too high, especially with now. Yes.
Valerie, if you buy travel insurance, which I just did because I just bought a ticket to California, does it allow you to cancel, change, switch? What can you do? Could you get your money
With
back?
Allianz Travel, that's a really good question. So with Allianz Travel, you can cancel for health, family emergencies. You can't cancel without penalty just because you decide to change your mind.
Even if you buy travel insurance?
Yes.
Right, I learned that.
Yes. Now, for instance, acts of God, extreme weather.
All right, so what about changing the dates?
Changing the dates depends on the,
You're
you're still gonna have to pay, but, call them up. Call them up. Sometimes I've gotten them to change my ticket free of charge, and sometimes they absolutely won't do it.
So, wait a minute. What does this mean then if you don't buy travel insurance? I mean, the insurance doesn't sound that great if
The
you can't do-
insurance, well, here's my example. So I booked a trip to Cancun, Mexico. This was 3 years ago. I know we're in the U.S., but again, I'm giving you this example. That particular year, this was 3 years ago, there was a particularly difficult June hurricane season. The rains came very early in that particular band of the world. Florida had it, so any trips to Key West, but I didn't know that. So I checked the weather, because I'm going to Mexico. Cancun's my favorite place ever, right? Well, the weather just kept on showing rain, 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 rain. So what did I do? That's when I found out about this Navy SEAL website. I called my cousin, I'm like, what's going on? It turns out that there was this tropical weather band that was forecast to land for 3 weeks in that particular area. Again, very low Florida, so lower Miami, Keys. And so what ended up happening is that I called JetBlue and I said, you've got a weather emergency here, and I said, and I don't want to pay for an entire week knowing that I'm going to have to be in the hotel. They waived the change fee.
Really?
They weren't supposed to legally, but they did, because I called them up and I was nice about it.
But Valerie, does that mean if you don't have insurance, you have no luck with a health emergency, nothing?
Yes.
What about
Really?
your credit card that you paid for it with? Is there any kind of...
Well, then you're disputing something that you already agreed to. The health, I always take the travel insurance. I have an elderly parent, and I always take the travel insurance because you really, really never know. I mean, I know that...
So that allows you to stop traveling?
So that it means...
Family emergency.
Yes. Or if something happens to me physically here or there.
Yeah.
Or if and it protects lost baggage. It protects you in case...
$17.
So for that amount of money, it's not bad.
Yeah.
And if you do, it depends. The price of the insurance is on a sliding scale with how much you're paying for your ticket or for your trip.
I had a girlfriend bail. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Isn't it also age? Is age over 75?
Sometimes it's age, but that's kind of illegal to really say it's about age.
Well, the
Some,
MedJet, isn't that the name of the company? Do you know MedJet, where you get a...
MedJet is medical insurance.
Right.
They have an age break, and it's much higher for a more elderly person.
Like 300
It's medical
for
insurance.
up
but
to
it's
75.
medical
You
insurance.
know that insurance?
I've heard of it, I've never had to use it.
Also AAA.
AAA has great insurance, AARP has a good travel insurance. I've only used the insurance that the that the airlines have offered. And, you know, I've had to cancel flights once when my uncle passed away. They completely refunded the amount of money. So I've had luck, and then other times I've been told I'm out of luck. So that's what it is. What were we gonna
I was
ask?
traveling with a friend and she bailed
Yeah,
and I couldn't get my money back. You know, with my traveling companion. It wasn't an illness, she just flaked. And so I wasn't going to go. I had this insurance, this is okay, no problem.
yeah, they're not gonna give you that back, especially now. It's too stringent. It's too stringent with
What
that.
about
Yes.
medical insurance?
So medical insurance is a
Companies.
so medical insurance company is a totally different, it's a totally different beast. There are, and I'll send you some names of that, I mean, I know about MedJet. And they're gonna ask for a little bit of a health profile, they're gonna wanna know history of travel, history of health, and their prices are a lot higher. But that means that you're protected in cases of medical emergencies before you leave, while you're there, when you come home. You gotta, in those cases with the medical insurance, I'd call them. I'd call them and make sure that I had my specific questions answered, you know? Because what happens if, you know, especially if you have a chronic illness or if you have a history of something, you want to make sure that you're covered. So it's a totally different beast with the medical insurance. I would go through them, I'd look at what the sites are, but for that kind of thing, I would make the calls so that I'm actually speaking to somebody and figuring out what my exact questions are.
It's just the older you get, you know, the
I
more
know.
you want to have protection.
Of
We went
course.
to Paris a couple of years ago. We were going to stay 3 months in a friend's apartment. After a month, we got bored and wanted to come back. I had bought medical insurance from a company in Philadelphia. They refunded the other 2 months. I mean, it was amazing. They sent us $600-700 back.
That's great that that worked out for you. It's more expensive though with the medical. Yes.
My husband bought tickets for one of our grandchildren, was graduating, and they were going to graduate in December. And it didn't work out that she was going to graduate and how she would be married. So he had already in the meantime had a displaced retina, and the doctor said you can't travel on airlines. And he called Delta, you know, and said, I have the note from the doctor and so forth. We were still out $700 because they wouldn't do anything but exchange the ticket, and then when you exchange the ticket, there's some kind of a $200 fee, and we were going to pay almost the same amount. And he said, I'll never fly Delta again, but I don't want to go through all of that problem. So we were out $700.
The insurance is,
And
it's tricky. It's tricky.
well, no, that was without.
But that was without insurance.
Yeah.
But sometimes they've said no, and sometimes they said yes. And even when because I always buy it now. But you know, I always find too that it's always worth a phone call. It's worth a follow-up letter. And if you get somebody decent on the phone, that's great. And if you don't get somebody decent, sometimes I call back and I do get somebody decent.
Well, that is what my son said. My son was saying, if you don't get too much satisfaction, you don't really feel comfortable with the person you're dealing with, call somebody.
Right.
Again, call again, get somebody else.
Right.
And it may work out in your favor.
I wanted to just, because you keep talking about calling and talking to someone, which I agree with, but that is getting harder and harder to get.
So go to a website called gethuman.com. It's a website called gethuman.com. Type in the name of the company, and it will give you a solution on how to talk to a person. 9 times out of 10, it'll work. If it's a, you know, it's got to be a major company. It's not gonna, you're not gonna find PC Richards on there. You know, you're gonna find, you know, it's got to be a major corporation. But I use that a lot in order to be able to get somebody on the phone. I'm a big customer service advocate. I'm not a pain in the ass, you guys. I'm sorry. But I'm big on customer service, and if something's good, I send letters afterwards to tell them it's good. If it's not good, I tell them that there's a problem, and I will go straight to the top. And I always get a response. So customer service is a whole other different ballgame. We could spend an hour talking about that. Yes, my dear.
As a senior for over 10 years, I go south to Florida usually in the winter, and I discovered this winter, the clerk was so bad, I called straight to Southwest, and I find taking a trip, making a discounted ticket, I'm from around the taxi works really well for me. Coming back, that's a good story, because
Right.
it's easy to pay a taxi or someone that needs money to come pick me up, but, or fly in Yosemite or something.
Right.
I don't always make a round trip reservation, and Southwest is good for that. But nonetheless, coming back, from Naples in, March this year was, wow, more expensive one way, but it's still worth it to have the flexibility.
Sure.
But what I discovered was really important, thanks to this clerk, if you ask for a wheelchair, the last thing I want, but she said, just ask for it. So I get at the airport and they come with court and you take your bag or waiting for you. And I got my choice of seat. I was the first person on the seat, the last, because I booked 2 days before and after what I did nowhere. And so I was grateful middle seats instead of window ones. But with the wheelchair, I had my choice of one seat in the plane. She
Right.
put me on the first, and they didn't make anything. And I said, well, I feel better, my leg's not off. Which was partially true, and that really worked.
Yeah, but people are doing that, and so there's a dozen wheelchairs lined up.
Oh, I
When they
know.
get the baggage, they all stand up and go on.
I know. So there's always that risk. If you need something, ask for it.
Yeah.
If you don't get it, you don't get it, but at least you asked, you know? So that's just something to think about, but you're right, then there's always an issue of abusing these kinds of things. All right, take care, thank you. Longer stays for retired people. So your best bets for something like that nowadays, and you know this, it's Airbnb or VRBO.
Never use them, I've been so afraid.
Penny, you've used it. Don't you have experience with Airbnb?
I used to be in our Airbnb.
Yeah, so I heard Airbnb is great.
Everyone gets reviews, the guests, the host, and so,
VRBO is great. I mean, I had, let's see, there was I've used Airbnb twice, I used VRBO once. I have a lot of friends all over the world, so I can stay at their houses, I'm kind of lucky. But for those long extended stays, you know, the thing is with Airbnb is what Penny just said, everybody's reviewed.
Everybody's rude. All right, I have to make sure, so I'm going to say
Okay.
goodbye to you
Okay.
folks, and Joanna's going to stay here. May I just say that I got a great credit card for travel recently, which was a venture capital.
Yeah, venture capital.
Capital venture, I have that one.
Yeah.
Capital venture, it's 2 miles for every dollar spent. No airline restrictions, no blackout days. So it's a really super card.
Thanks, Penny. Thank you very much.
So venture capital.
It's Capital One, it's the venture card for Capital One. It's the best travel card to have.
Because you can find any airline.
Right.
Anytime.
So with that, I'm going to explain my process is that, so a venture capital card, right? Remember I told you what I did with the parking? So,
Well, I'm still not quite sure
Okay.
on the parking, because do you have to pay for the group?
oh yeah, you pay for the Groupon.
But are you paying for your parking in the Groupon?
Yeah.
Or you're paying for a
Not membership, right?
people?
No. Groupon is not a membership, it's coupons.
I know it.
Yeah.
But what are you, when you pay them, are you paying them for the parking or you're paying them $20 for a coupon?
I'm paying Groupon for the parking, and Groupon issues me a coupon.
Okay, but so then how is the parking spot getting paid? Groupon pays them?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not,
And then, so then you couldn't use your AAA as the parking spot?
no, because that's two different, that's two discounts.
Because
You're prepaying.
you're
So with that, okay, so here's Penny's venture capital with the card. So here's how I get mileage, right? So I use a venture capital card to pay for my Groupon, which is giving me discounted parking at JFK. I wait till Groupon sends me a 20% off coupon, so now I'm getting more discount on that. When I go to Groupon, I go through JetBlue.com or I go through American Airlines Advantage Shopping Mall, and I buy it through there. I get the discount, I pay for it on my venture capital card. I'm getting points on my venture capital card. I'm getting points on my American Airlines frequent flyer mileage or my JetBlue frequent flyer mileage. I'm getting the parking at a discount, and then I'm getting another 20% off. And to top it all off, I join Smart Park, and I join the parking spot as a frequent member, and I get credit for my points there. It's all about accruing points, so that I can then, because the thing is that customers, especially in the travel industry, they will take into consideration your loyalty to them. But that's, I enjoy this. I enjoy finding the deal and finding the bargain, and I enjoy surfing online and seeing what's available and what's not available, and, well, okay, I'll go here, I'll go there. I have flexibility. Maybe some of you do too. I know that a lot of people with kids or teachers or things like that, your only time to travel is during that February week, or during the Easter break, or during the summer, God forbid, right? Summer travel for me, I very rarely will leave the Hamptons. Very rarely. It's crazy. New York City, you guys, forget it. It's always expensive. However, on New York City, what do? I go to Groupon, and I find New York City hotels on Groupon. Or I might go to, there's,
Hotels.com.
Hotels.com is okay, Booking.com is okay. There's a place called Cheap Vacations. I know the person that owns Cheap Vacations, and sometimes they get amazing deals. If something comes in from New York, it's gone like right away. You can get alerts, lastminutetravel.com. You can get alerts on your smartphone. They can tell you detailed deals that are available. Again, I'm going to send you all of this. There's another travel company. Sorry, my brain's not working. I think it's OAS, Overseas. OAT is what it is. OAT. Great travel deals. Great travel deals. Very geared towards 55 and over. They have some really amazing trips. They were the first group to organize a trip to Cuba after it was, allowed to be visited again. And the deals are very good. They keep the groups to a minimum, and it's nice hotels. It's really nice itineraries, and the prices are very reasonable. It's OAT, Overseas Adventure Travel. But they do have travel now in the United States. So again, a lot of what I do, or what you do for yourselves, is figure out where do you want to go? When do you want to go? What's important to you? I can tell you what's important to me so that I have a comfortable experience traveling, because it's not the same being on a plane now the way it even was 20 years ago. It's not. And it's uncomfortable, and you're dealing with a lot of people, a lot of security measures. And it's true, even when you're on the security line. Look and see who you're traveling behind, and that's how you're going to be able to, I hate to say it, but if you're behind a family or somebody with a stroller, it's going to take you a very long time to get through that security. So pick which window you can go to. I do have the, what's the travel? I have the global entry card. It's $85. I paid $85 for it for the TSA approved.
Can you get a coupon on that?
No. The catch with the catch with the TSA approved. is that the airport, still reserves the right to not let you go through. Even if you get TSA approved, the airport can say, no, you have to go through the regular line. At any moment, the airport can tell you where it is that you need to go. So I've never been stopped now since I got it. You know, it was a very worthwhile investment for me for $85.
I had to go into JFK.
And I went to JFK, and so I just, you know, and I bundle this all around trips and stuff like that, you know, day trips, things like that.
I had the Clear membership, free for 3 months. They were top of the line. But then the yearly membership is $120 some. I called them to cancel it the other day. They said, how about $99? And they're only in the U.S.
Right.
So I needed something international. But they were so good. They just walked me right in.
Yeah. So there's a couple of different
Yeah.
options, yes.
How long is a little electric car good for?
I think you have to renew it, oh, it's 5 now, 5 years.
What is this?
Global entry, it gets you off so you're TSA approved, and what that means is that you don't have to take off your shoes, you don't have to take the laptop out of the bag, you don't have to take off your jacket, you don't have to do all those things. And coming through customs, if you're going to be doing any kind of international travel, and Caribbean included, it's really helpful for you.
How do you get that?
I'm going to send you the link. You have to apply, and then you have to actually go to one of the airports and go through a process for it. But it's well worth it if you do any overseas travel. It's really well worth it. Anything outside of United States. Yes.
I have TSA pre-check. Would that also be for international as well?
No.
No. So there's global entry and TSA approved, and they're not one and the same. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Have a great afternoon. So we are at the end of our time today. I can't believe we could talk about this all afternoon, right? I feel like I never even begin to scrape the subject. So as I said, I will send you some more sites and some more things to look at. A lot of it also depends, again, as I said, on how much time you're willing to devote to something. I love doing that on the computer. That's how I'll plan vacations. I put on my Marriott website, I have my dream destinations, and I sign up for every promotion that there is to do, and I have a separate email address that I created so that it doesn't boggle down my email box. So you all have the power to do that, but be really specific too, if something really bothers you about flying or whatever, that's why I told you, for me, I want to sit in the front of the plane on the aisle. That's a big criteria for me. I will tell you, however, that sometimes I have booked a flight and they've given me something in the middle or on the window. If you call 24 hours before, there are 6 seats that are set aside on every plane that are never sold. And they will, except for United, right? 6, the seat assignments. It's the seat assignments that are not given for 6 seats, and they're not the extra room. If you need extra space, if you feel more comfortable with something, ask. I have never been turned down when I've called and said, could you change my seat? And they've moved me to a different place on the plane.
And they don't charge you the extra?
Not that if I'm not going to an extra space seat, no. If I go to an extra space seat, they're going to charge me. But not, they always keep 6 seats unassigned. They assign them at the airport.
When I was on JetBlue was there.
Yeah.
I was adored you to pay $60.
Right, so there's extra seats, there's extra room, that's the way the airlines all get us to spend extra money. There's extra room seats on all those airlines. But a lot of times, ask. It's a tricky business. It's well worth it to spend a little extra time on some things like that. But if you want to make the travel as comfortable as possible, so if there's some criteria that you have, be really specific about that, and then you can find ways to navigate that.
Yeah,
Yes.
One of the last times.
Thank you.
I went, that I flew, I had to go up to the desk, and they said to me, well, would you be interested in, a security spot where they open the whole airline? So I took that, and it was more spacious. Are those the seats that you're talking about?
No, those are the special seats for people those are the exit rows. That's not what I'm talking about. There's extra space seats now on all airlines, and they charge anywhere from $15 to $60
Yeah.
for those flights.
So I could actually go up to somebody at the desk and just say, I'm interested in that if it's available.
You
If I want to.
you could do that. Chances are, it could work in your favor, sometimes it can. But it doesn't hurt to ask, is what I'm saying. And just, and be nice about it. It sounds to me like you're very nice about it. Be nice about it. They've had a terrible day. They really have had a terrible day. So no matter what, I think airline personnel can still be kind of grumpy. So if you're their bright spot in the day, in the old days, man, they'd upgrade you to first class, no problem. That happened to me all the time when I was flying in the late 80s and the 90s. They can't do that anymore, obviously. But, well, thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. I'll send you an email. Again, my name is Valerie. You'll get something from Valerie diLorenzo at msn.com.